I'm Bill Stearns. I work with Active Countermeasures. You'll be glad to know that there's no sales pitch going on today at all. I won't even tell you what we sell. I work in the tech support team, helping out people around the world with issues with our software. This is a presentation trying to cover a lot of the tools that we use, the techniques that we use. I'm glad to say that we have reasonably good response from our customers on how well the tech support works. That's not ego. It is simply that a lot of these just happen to work, and I'm hoping they'll help you as well. If you haven't already gotten the slides, please pull them down from the Track 3 slides directory, either now or when you are getting ready to head out. There are going to be some things that we won't cover in the end. At the end of the presentation, there are, I think, 6 or 7 case studies of how a tech support incident went. They are not ones that we're going to have time to cover today, but you can take a look down. There'll be a short summary of what the problem is up in the slide, and then down in the speaker notes, there's a section on how the whole incident came out and what type of tools and techniques we had used to get there. Thank you to the staff of Wild West Hacking Fest for making this possible. We really appreciate it. As it's probably obvious, there's no way I can talk about individual tech support issues with a particular program. This is all about the process of tech support. What can you do, no matter what you're supporting, to make your customers happy, get them what they need? We're going to take a look at the steps, what we can do to make the process work well. As I said, my role at the moment is supporting a piece of computer software. I've supported computer hardware, networking areas. I've supported universities' computing clusters. These techniques follow very nicely one to the other. The exact tools that I use are going to be different from supporting an application running on a Mac to a virtualization cluster in a data center somewhere in St. Louis. But the techniques are all the same. If you work for a company and you say, well, I don't have customers, you sure do. They're your coworkers. So when somebody comes to you and says, I need to have a certain thing done, they're your customer. They're the people you've got to keep happy. This was probably, for me, the most interesting part of writing this presentation is realizing you've got 2 primary jobs. You're a translator and you're a puzzle master. Let's take a look at both of those. First off, as a translator, your job is to take communication in 2 directions. I love my developers. They are wonderful people. They come up with great software. But I can't say that they are always the most patient individuals with end users. I can't say that they're always speaking at a level that my end users want to hear. Similarly, my end users are not speaking at a level that my developers want to hear. So a lot of my time is taking the emails that come in, distilling the essence of them, and presenting them in a way that my developers can understand and can work with, collecting additional information, and then taking what the developers suggest and turning that into something that the end users can understand, because they're just not on the same level. It's not an insult to either group. It's just they aren't. So if I can find out what happened, if I can pull out additional information beyond the initial trouble report to summarize what's really happening, that means my developers can spend less time on the problem trying to track down little piddling details. I can do that part for them. You're a puzzle master. So if you like Sudoku or crosswords, if you are a chess fiend, if you read mystery books and try to figure out what happened before the end, this is your role. This is where you should be. Trying to go and fill in a problem with incomplete information is my day. I need to be able to say, I've gotten these little snippets of information from my customer, but they're not enough to tell me what happened. What do I need next? What do I need to troubleshoot it? Once I've got a hypothesis, then I go in and test to say, was that it? If it wasn't, we'll try again. I'm a teacher, and that is, that's whether I'm doing tech support or not, that's what I like to do. So I will spend time on a support ticket, giving background information, explaining to the customer what happened. why this error showed up, helping them understand networking concepts, giving them pointers to blog posts that we wrote or blog posts that somebody else wrote on why this particular problem exists, or technical information that will help them understand the problem. It's kind of unavoidable. I'm lucky that I have a boss and a boss's boss who are both very flexible, and they're like, get the customers happy, as opposed to get them off the phone as fast as you can, because we have 4 more customers lined up behind you. And so I'm very happy to work for Black Hills and for Active Countermeasures where I get that kind of support. You don't get it everywhere. I'm a listener. You wouldn't know it from what you've heard so far, but there's a difference between someone who will listen to a customer because they have to and is just waiting for a chance to get a word in edgewise, and someone who's truly listening and saying, I care about what you're saying. What you're saying is the most important part to me right now. And when it comes time, I'll take my turn as well, but I'm not just waiting to talk. That's not the same as listening. Your customer should always feel like they are the most important person in the world to you. And you should be giving them the time they need, whether it's on email or chat or telephone or video conferencing. You give them the time they need to the best of your ability. You're an ambassador. Now, once the sales process is done, you're it. You may be the only person with whom your customers have contact after the sales process is done. So if you're a jerk, it's going to show up, and those are the customers who aren't going to buy the next version or resubscribe when the year's contract comes up. If you're giving good information, if you're helping them along, if you're making them feel empowered, if you're making them feel like they're important, that can honestly be the difference between a customer who would otherwise have canceled and who will continue to work with you in the future and will give you good praise on social media, as opposed to saying those guys are jerks. Don't even waste your time. I like to at least make myself available to all the members of the sales team. Say, if you've got a call, doesn't matter what the time of day is, I'll be on it. If you've got questions and you want to just, if you think they're going to be technical questions, you'd like me to join in, I'm happy to do that. If you're in the middle of a call, some technical questions come up that you hadn't expected, nudge me, I'll jump right on and help you out as best I can. We have customers around the world, so I have to be at least willing to join in on calls on very, very odd schedules. And I'm good with that. I may not be happy about that, but I'm good with that. And with a little coffee, I can make it sound like I really am okay being there. On a sales call, this is one of the times when you do need to do a little digesting. Someone who hasn't worked with your product, no matter how technically strong they are, is not going to be ready for, oh yeah, you can do this. Just go in and edit this text file. You have to pull up this particular field. No, what they need is, yeah, we can work with that feature. And then later, once they've made the purchase, then you can go back and help them understand the exact steps needed to do that. But what you should be giving is very high level information, obviously, for someone who hasn't even purchased the product yet, to say whether this is possible or not. And then maybe make a note in your tracking system saying, when these customers come on, remember to send them this blog post to say how to accomplish a task. You're honest. There is an unfortunate feeling, especially with people who've just come on to start with tech support, that I always have to say something, even if it's not true. I have to always come across as an expert. I never mind saying to somebody, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. I will get you the answer to that question, but I don't know it now. So explaining to people who are coming on to tech support for the first time, it's okay to say I don't know as long as you get the answer. And that may be the most you can do at any given moment. It's never a problem to say I don't know. It is a problem to lie. Imagination is not only being able to do troubleshooting and think about what are the steps between a broken system to get it to a working system, but imagining what the customer is seeing. With the exception of video conferencing, all the time I have to imagine what they're seeing. What kind of errors are they seeing on the screen? Where are they right now? Can I picture what command line they're sitting on? Can I tell what screen they're working with? Where is the configuration button on that screen? So there's a whole lot of imagination going on to make that happen. And I'm committed. Whether I have the answer right now or not, I am committed to getting them what they need. In most cases, it's a satisfactory answer. Sometimes it isn't. But I want to make sure that we get to a resolution that they are happy with. Sometimes that may be a refund. I hate having to do that. But sometimes we just cannot get them what they need at a technical level. We have to give them a refund. The customer experience is really tough. You are catching them at the worst possible moment, because by the time they've decided it's worth trying to get in touch with you, they've been fighting this for a while. They're annoyed. They're seeing things on the screen that don't make sense. They're being asked questions they don't know how to answer. They're looking things up on Google, and Google's coming up with butkus. This is the worst possible time for you to jump in. So be aware of that. Give them patience. Say, how can I help? What can we do together? If they're frustrated at you, that's a shame, but it's going to happen. Give them a little bit of slack as long as they're not being abusive. Start off with, what can we do to solve this? How can I help you? What are you seeing? Is a great way to kind of distract somebody who's really annoyed to something that they absolutely can't answer. What error message are you getting? What's coming up on your screen? Are you getting a white screen? Are you getting some kind of error code that you can't figure out? I can help you with that. Let's work on this together. I did want to talk about troubleshooting, but this is almost impossible to make into a linear process. You're going to bounce around. By the way, I'm not assuming that all of you have suddenly popped in here as first-time tech support representatives. That I'm assuming all of you have done this for many years. It's obvious that there are going to be some things that you already know. What I'm hoping is that by the time you're done with this and you head off to the last keynote, that you found a couple of nuggets, a couple of things to try that you hadn't considered before. So when we get to things that you have seen, smile knowingly, and then we'll get to some good stuff afterwards. Start off with the error message. Can the user tell you what they expected to see and how it's different from what they're seeing right now? When does it happen? When did it start happening? Was it right around the time of a system upgrade? Was it right around the time you upgraded the software? Did you run out of disk space and all of a sudden things started to break? That's very common. Is it always broken? Or are there times it's broken and then first thing in the morning it seems to work for a couple of hours and then by the time we get to noon it's basically unusable? Working out what the cause is, if you can figure out something that causes it to break, that's a great start from finding the answer. Never work on two problems at once. I do get customers who will either send in a ticket with 4 problems, or they start off with one problem and then they keep using that one ticket for the next 3 months for all kinds of issues. And my head hurts with that because I've got this really long stream of events all on one ticket. And I'll usually say, hey, is it okay with you if we just break this off into a separate ticket so that I can keep your problem separate? And they've never complained. Start off with the most important problem first. If it's a security issue, if the software just plain isn't working, that is far more important than our licensing is about to expire. Can you help us with that? I'll probably bounce that off to the sales team, but start off with the most critical ones first. Collect the details. What's the software version you're working with? If somebody's got something very old, that may be the reason why they're running into problems. What's the underlying operating system? Are you making any custom changes? Is this system used for other things as well? Are you running on a virtualization platform, a cloud platform? Is this running on bare hardware? Do you have error messages either on the screen or somewhere baked down in a file somewhere? Grab those if you can, ask the customer to send them along. Many cases, those will point you at the source of the problem. Security modules, this gets interesting. We have a couple of customers that are in the DoD, and they have very, very specific rules about how systems are set up, and they don't have the option to change those rules. So the additional hardening that I find happen to show up more commonly with DoD customers means that as soon as I see Navy.mil in the response, I know one of the things I'm going to be asking them, and we'll get to that. Did the problem show up around the time you made network or firewall changes? Did it show up after a reboot? Is there a chance that something didn't start correctly after a reboot? Or configuration changes? That's the other big one. If it was working for a while and then you said, summarize all events that are over 10,000 entries to summarize all events over 10 entries, maybe the system's just getting overloaded. Can I come up with sample input or a sample configuration that's broken and contrast that against a similar system that's working fine? And I've actually had to do that. We had one customer that had two systems. One was working just fine. The second one would not send out syslog alerts for any reason at all. And we actually went down to each of the individual configuration options on their system and compared them one by one as part of the troubleshooting. It's a pain, but there are times you have to do it. Keep asking for relevant information, and there's a kind of a picture in your head of, okay, can I keep all of this in my brain, or do I need to start putting this into a doc? For some places, especially if you're working with multiple team members on multiple time zones and you're kind of going through the night, there's no other choice. You always have to start a doc of some kind, a notes field in the ticketing system, a Google Doc, whatever works for you, where you have to share that information, and because you're not going to be the one who's going to be following this through to the end. Me, I'm lucky because most of what I'm doing tends to be a single individual working on a problem, so I have the flexibility of saying I can keep this all in the ticket versus trying to make up a separate doc where I'm writing down all the details I've collected. Keep good notes, especially if you're asking the customer to troubleshoot. What did you ask them to change so that you can unwind that at the end, step by step, making sure it continues to work? I love my customers. I really do. I smile at them all day long. And I know for a fact they are not going to tell me everything for lots of reasons. One, it takes too long. Two, they don't know what's important. Three, they may not want to tell me all of the stuff in their environment because they're worried they're going to give out too much and get in trouble for it. All kinds of reasons. I have to be the one prodding them for what are the additional facts that I need to help understand your problem. And that's just fine. Once I've got a sense of what's broken, can I set up a similar system at my end? Can I reproduce their environment to some degree? So maybe we think the problem's in a config file. Can you send me that file? I'm going to set up the software with that file, and we'll see if we can make it break. Maybe it's input data. Maybe it's a particular networking configuration that you're working with. Can I match their configuration? And if I take that same config file, I put it into my system, and my system works, it's not the config file. So you're throwing away hypotheses by trying to set up an identical system to theirs, if at all possible. If I know what component is causing the problem, what options do I have with that? Can I disable it? Can I replace it with an older version of the software? Can I pull that out and put in some kind of replacement? It depends on how your particular environment is set up. But I'd love to be able to try some things to say, If I put in the 5.2 version of this module, can I get it working again? Okay, great. So maybe the change is somewhere between 5.2 and 5.3, and now that helps us narrow the problem down. So if you can find a component, that may be your workaround for the moment. You can tell the customer, we're going to leave 5.2 in there. You can use that. It'll run a little slower, but we'll keep working on what the problem is. We'll get you the fix, but at the moment, we want to get you at least back up and running. I wanted to do something like a troubleshooting toolkit. Most of this talk is pretty independent of the thing you are supporting. And I don't really want to get too deep into what I happen to use for troubleshooting an application that runs as a service on a server in a web browser. The tools that I use probably aren't going to come anywhere close to what you would use on a day-to-day basis. But in here, I'm talking a little bit about what types of things I'm going to ask for myself. If you work with other people, say, what kind of questions do you ask of a customer? What kind of background information is helpful to understand our particular product, and what kind of things might be going wrong? I'm going to keep going on these because they're really specific to mostly a PC. Build up your own list. What you've used in the past. I will commonly go to our developers and say, I have no idea how to find out what user accounts are available on our particular application. And it turns out you can find them, but it's a very bizarre database query that I couldn't possibly come up with on my own. So I'll build a document of troubleshooting queries, something I can quickly search. And that way, the next time this comes up, I can simply cut and paste that over to the ticketing system. If I find if I see something on their system, then it's probably all working. If I see something else, I may be out of disk space. If I see some other thing, I may not have permissions to accomplish the particular task. These are the kinds of things that I want to jot down in that toolkit of what to look for and how to troubleshoot it. What to look for, how to troubleshoot it. Share it with your team, obviously. Have other people share it, put their input in if possible. I hate this. I get someone who comes to me and they say, hey, this isn't working. And to their credit, it isn't. But I also realize, wait a second, this doesn't sound like something we screwed up. And so partway into the troubleshooting process, I'll realize it's not our software, or it's something off to the side, or it's their operating system and they made a change to it. It broke our software, but it's not ours. So there are all kinds of times when it's somebody else's problem to fix. That's fine. I'll usually spend a little bit more time with them and I'll say, okay, it looks like it's this other component. I'd like to give you enough, I'd like to leave you with the questions that you should bring to fill in the blank here, your router manufacturer, your support team, the system administrator for that computer, the operating system vendor. Here are the questions that you need to ask of them to resolve this. And more often than not, if I can just take a few minutes to get them to that point where they can make some headway, they're usually fine with the fact that I'm kind of stepping off to the side if they understand that it's not really our problem. Let's get down into the process. First thing to figure out is, how do I categorize this? They're all different kinds of categories. The code's broken. It just plain doesn't work. Okay, great. We've got a bug to work on. The documentation isn't correct. I can fix that. So that's usually a very quick one to patch over. It's a cosmetic issue. The software's working, but we made a typo on a particular screen, or an icon is incorrect, or something's not showing up in the display that should, and it's a cascading style sheet issue. Great. We can solve that, but it's not critical. As long as they can keep using the software, I can kind of put that into a normal ticket. We can schedule that for the next release. There's no documentation for it. That happens sometimes. As you might tell, I tend to do a lot on the documentation side. I get to kick myself. Is there a conflict with the customer environment? Not too common, as long as you've got a reasonably clear statement of what are the prerequisites to run our particular package. You don't tend to get that too often, although it doesn't matter how much documentation you write. I can write 5 pages of documentation or 500 pages of documentation, and it's just as easy for the customer to skip over it and say, well, if something goes wrong, I might have to go back to it, but I don't really feel like reading this. That's okay. I'll act as an interpreter for my own docs. New feature request, that's kind of up to how your company does product development. Can you act as a conduit for that, pass along those requests and say, customer asked for this, can we add this? I want to know the severity level. Is this a security bug that's going to affect all of our customers? Great. That's all hands on deck, and I'll start waking people up if it's 2 in the morning. If it only affects a small number of customers or a limited configuration, I will still get the relevant people involved, but I'm not going to wake up managers and people who are going to act as communication directors for the issue. If it's an outage that affects either this one customer or we've seen 1 or 2 people with this, I'll work it. We'll figure out what the problem is and try to resolve it. It might be, how many customers it affects the severity level that I'm going to assign to this. Is it a cosmetic bug? Nobody's getting woken up for that. If it's a feature request or an improvement, great. We'll file that away in the right places. And sometimes it's just the customer didn't understand how something works. Great. I can do that any day of the week. Urgency is based on that severity level. I try to get to everybody within an hour, no matter what. If I can, I'll try to get it in under 15 minutes. You can't always do that. Sometimes meetings get in the way, or I know it's going to be a complex problem. It's going to take a while to get them an answer. But what I will do is, if I can't answer it in the time frame I think is appropriate, I at least send them an email and say, got your message. I'm working on it. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And I also make it a rule that I don't go more than a day without a follow-up. Every single day, even if it's same status as yesterday, they get a follow-up every day if they have open issues. When you think you've got a solution, pass it back. Document it as well as you can. Give at least a paragraph saying what you're intending to do, and then say, here are the steps to implement this patch, workaround, temporary fix, permanent fix if you've got it, and think about your customer's technical ability. For some customers, I know that they are happy at a Unix command line and they will just type away. They'll figure it out themselves. They'll know where to go. Others, I need to write out every single command they need to type, and I'm good with that too. But that helps them not feel dumb if I say, oh, just run this command, but I don't say where to run it, and I don't say what environment they have to be in, and do they have to be root? Do they have to be logged in to something else? I should be sending them answers after I've confirmed that they work. I think that's a reasonable statement. I may have to go and reproduce it part of their environment to just double check it's going to fix it, but hopefully somebody's tested this out before you send it out. I have a rule. Never say reboot it or reinstall it unless I am almost 100% certain that is an actual fix. I can think of exactly one point in our software where you actually have to reboot the system, and that's where you're doing some, in my case, I'm doing some drive mapping that really only happens at boot time, and trying to do it any other way is just basically won't work. If it's a bug, write it up. Clearly say what you've learned, what are the symptoms that you found, what did the customer expect to see, what did the customer see, and that helps your development team know if they fixed the bug. I'll usually include a pointer to the support ticket, because all of our developers have at least read-only access to that system, And that way, if I don't include enough detail, they can go over and take a look, but I try not to assume that they're going to go there for that information. I don't want to ask for customer data if I don't have to. Many of them are flexible enough to say, I'll send you a config file. I'll send you a sample data file. I may need an NDA in order to get you that, and we're happy to obviously sign those with them. But I don't try to ask for customer data if I don't really need it. Never promise dates. I will kind of give a vague sense of maybe when something might be out, but I try to make it clear that I'm not in a role where I can say it's going to get fixed by this date. You're a tech support rep. You're not a human evaluator. I never want to make a bug that they're calling about be an issue about them. If it's broken, it's not broken because they did something. It's broken. And so if I can keep all of the language that I used, focus on the problem and not anything insulting about the end user, it's not their fault. Even if they typed the command that broke it, it's still not their fault. They shouldn't have been in a place where they could have typed that command. So it's always about the problem. I never make it about the customer. That by itself probably makes them feel generally much happier about calling me as opposed to dreading talking to me because I'm just going to insult them again. I don't do that. Tell them what you can and cannot fix. If they have issues, what are the next steps? What am I going to do to try to get you to a resolution? I may not have a resolution, in some cases for weeks. But I will tell you, what are my next steps? What am I going to do to get you to a working point? Keep them updated regularly, whatever that happens to be for you, even if it's just a quick, hey, no change for yesterday, but I'll check back in with you tomorrow. That's better than nothing, because a silent communication line, people start to get annoyed. They start to wonder, is he actually doing something? Am I just wasting my time calling tech support? If I at least keep up with them, they know they're getting some kind of action. If I don't know the answer, and it happens all the time, I joke about this a lot because we have very intelligent developers. These guys have done a wonderful job on the piece of software I happen to support. But I'm going to have times when I don't have an answer and I have to fall back on them. So the first rule is I try to answer everything I can. I try to get what I think is the needed background information in before I even consider asking for help. I don't want them to have to spend a lot of time pulling in basic system facts when I could have done that in advance. I'm protecting their time as much as I can because every minute they spend doing my tech support is one more minute that keeps the next version from coming out. I write up what I know so far. Try to throw away stuff that I think is probably not relevant, but try to get it down to the relevant facts as quickly as I can. Secondary support, by the way, does not necessarily have to be the developers. It can be the other people that you work with. Send out a note to the entire tech support team. I've got this one customer, and for some reason, he cannot make a change to this particular file in this particular location. What's going on? And somebody else is like, hey, have you checked? Fill in the blank here. Do I need to know everything my developers do? Oh no, not a chance. If I were that smart, I would be developing. I would not be doing tech support. But if I have at least a basic understanding of the underlying tools and techniques, that makes it easier for me to be the translator between the customer and the developers, because I can talk MongoDB with the developers and I can run this command with the end users and act as that middle person between the two. I do like to ask for access to the source code of the thing that I am supporting, not because I feel like I could ever make a usable contribution, but because that helps me do searches for things like messages that pop up on the screen. And if I can narrow it down to a certain line in a file, that means the next person who's going to be helping me can go back, look a couple lines up, say, how did I get into this state? What was the test that happened to get me here? Why did this particular test fail? And so on. After we find the problem, there are a number of things that happen, usually in parallel. I need to get the fix out to the customer. I need to test the solution. I need to look at putting that solution into the next release of the software. We may need to have QA checks to say, did this problem ever show up again? And those might be unit tests that go into the code base, or it might be a QA document that's set up before release to make sure that this never happens again. I want to share this. Do I need to share this out with all of our customers? There have been times. There's been a bug. We know that it's going to break certain configurations. Okay, let's write that up. It will usually go up on our portal site. If it's something that's critical that they have to fix as quickly as possible, we'll do an email to each customer directly with as many clear statements as we can. First one is, does this problem affect me? They should have some relatively straightforward way to check to see if this is something that they need to worry about. And if it does, then what are the steps that they need to perform today to stop it? It might be a temporary workaround, it might be a permanent fix, but what do they have to do to solve it? And at the bottom, always contact us at support@activecountermeasures.com if you have any questions. Do we need it to update any documents, blogs, webcasts, anything else where we have to include this information? That tends to be a lower priority. That we can do over the next couple of days after the main alert has gone out. When is the problem solved? When the customer thinks it's solved, not when I think it's solved. So I will usually end up a long tech support chain with saying, where are you? Do you feel like this is covered for you? Is everything working? Are you still running into problems with this? There are lots of ways to phrase it. But I want to make an open-ended question that lets them come back to me and say, you know, thanks for your time, but this is still not working. It's still really sluggish, or whatever the problem is. Good, back we go. Let's go and figure out the next stage. Let's figure out what we have to do next. Common one is, how do I fill in the blank? And that's where I can usually take a little time to write up a blog post, do a quick webcast, have some kind of, maybe put it in the documentation. I find over time I'm less of a fan of a big user doc than I used to be, because it's not really a great, effective way of getting the information to the right people at the right place at the right time. It's great that it's there, but I can write tons of documentation that never get read. I'd rather have something in the user interface that pops up and a little question mark says, oh yeah, if you're seeing this, you can go here to get more information about this particular feature, than something I put into a flat document. I do want to talk a little bit about what you need to do the job well. Again, some of this is going to be stuff you already know. The first thing for me is access to a copy of the thing that I'm supporting, whether it's a piece of hardware, a transmission for a Chevy Malibu, a piece of software, a networking device. I'd like to have a copy of that, and specifically a non-production copy. Don't say, oh, you can go over to our main web server and you can play there. No, 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 no. I want something I can break. Give me something that I can screw up over and over and over again so I can fix it. So I want something that I can have locally in my house, under my control, up in a cloud environment, whatever it happens to be, because I want to break it. And I want to learn what it takes to fix it. Because if I do that over and over again, now I can keep some notes about, oh yeah, I saw this before, and this is what I had to do to fix it. Try out all of the advanced features. This takes time. And so when I've got a quiet point between tech support requests, that's when I can go back to that copy of, in my case, a piece of software, and start trying out some of the features. Are there things that I can put in that most people wouldn't normally use? Great, let's see how that goes. Are there pitfalls in setting this up? Do I have to edit some YAML file that's really sensitive about spacing? I would hate to have that actually happen in practice, but it does. break it? What happens if I bring the memory for the system down to 1 gigabyte? What happens if I only give it one processor and it needs 12? What happens if I deliberately fill up the disk? Does it keep working? Does it give me a usable error message, or does it just kind of come up with random stuff? Do all of the things that I can do to break it. And that means that I've got a sense of what I did before and how I can likely fix it when a customer comes in with the same problem. Get familiar with how to start and stop it, how to reinstall it. I should probably reinstall it 5 or 6 times if it's a piece of software. Make sure that I think about all the different options that somebody can do. What happens if I install this on a different operating system? Are there considerations there? Set up every feature and disable them in a different order than you used to set them up. Sometimes you may find that that causes problems right there. We talked a little bit about responsiveness already. 15 minutes is nice because I have a relatively light tech support load. It gives me time to work on other things. So that means that if I can answer immediately, like literally within 2 or 3 minutes, I will do that. But I try to say 15 minutes most of the time, and something back to the customer in under an hour, even if I have to pull off on the side of the road because I'm driving and say, I'm on the road, I will get back to you within 45 minutes, but usually within an hour. The other side of having a small tech support team is that I'm on 24/7. I'm not actually responding 24/7. And I have some customers in Europe, for example, that know that they're not going to hear from me for a while. And I've worked out some arrangements with them. So, for example, I'm not supposed to do this, but I've given them my cell phone number. I put them in my contact list and I put on emergency bypass, meaning that even if it's on silent, it will still ring at 2 in the morning. And they understand that that's an emergency backup. That is, something is terribly wrong. I need your help right now. No one has used it. Multiple resellers have that information. No one has actually had to use it, but I'm glad it's there because it means they always know they can get a hold of me. They're not waiting for 5 hours every time before I'll respond. Say what you're going to do and keep that promise. It's very helpful to have backup staff. Even if it's not a person who is normally involved in tech support, if you have a team of 3 and all 3 of you happen to be out on Christmas morning, is there someone who could at least watch the tech support queue in that group? Or is there somebody else who's going to be on duty that day anyways who could just be a front person and answer and say, hey, it's a little thin today. Is this something that could wait till Monday? Any response is better than nothing. Just out of interest, how do you track your support requests? What technique do you use? What tool do you use? What product do you use? Ticket system. Jira, fantastic. ServiceNow. And is that a kind of a cloud-based software as a service? Fantastic. Anybody else? You don't have to share it. That's okay. We tried email for a while. It's really tough to do email if you have more than one person involved. It's one of these things where it's just plain impractical to share what you've already done with somebody else who jumps in halfway through the thread. So as soon as we went to having more than one person on the tech support team, we really felt we had to jump to something else. So you need some way to be able to share what you've done. It needs to be text searchable. It needs to be connected to that customer. If I can find out all the tickets associated with that customer, that's great. If I can keep notes about that customer, that's great. The shared doc, I've talked about that before. It might be something in Microsoft Teams, Google Docs, something where multiple people can be editing it at the same time. For a single person working on a problem, it's not a big deal. When you get a big event, a big security issue where multiple people are doing investigation, You've brought in outside help. You have a communications person who's handling the communication with customers. When you have managers who want to keep an eye on what you found so far, having something that multiple people can work on at the same time is absolutely crucial. Live support, we use Help Scout. Help Scout happens to go and send things in both as emails, so I could answer them right in my email package if I wanted to, and there's also a web-based interface. We decided that we wanted to go beyond just kind of an email back and forth, which is functional but not always kind of soft and fuzzy for the customer. We decided that we wanted to add both video conferencing, live chat, on top of support tickets, emailed support tickets as options. And so Help Scout will do live chat and it will do support tickets. And we'll talk a little bit more about the video conferencing in just a minute. I have a separate section on that. But I also set up some hours during the day that are available for customers to self-schedule. So any customer can come in and say, I want that half-hour block. They don't have to check with me first. I don't have to approve it. They just sign up, and in that slot, we're ready to go. I don't give all week, because if every customer knew that they could automatically fill in any time slot during the entire work week, there's no point in sending in an email. Email's a little bit easier to deal with, so I would rather kind of gently encourage people to use that, but still be available on the voice support. And I've also set it up, because we have customers around the world, that every customer has at least one time slot between 8 and 5 their workday that they can schedule. And so I have some actual support hours that go to about 1 in the morning, my time, and then start about 9 in the morning, my time, and that covers the entire world. Turkey is the only place that has a single half-hour slot, but we only have one customer there. The rest of the world has at least 2 in their 8 to 5 time zone. Right, have a website where you can put up fact documents. That's very straightforward. Blog posts are a little bit longer. I want to go and cover core topics. And I've found, even though it takes a while to write those, that they've come in really handy over time. Over the couple of years that we've been writing blog posts, I find probably 1 out of 4 support tickets, I'm including a pointer to at least one of those documents that's already written. And it saves me a ton of time, because I've really started off with very simple core concepts worked into what you're doing, worked into how you do it, into how you test it. And now I don't have to do that on every support ticket. Webcasts a little bit longer. Same kind of thing though. How can we get good information across to our customers? How many people have seen a Black Hills, ACM, Antisyphon, WWHF webcasts? And what's the most fun part? Pre-show banter. Get down and just talk and say what you're interested in. Have people bring up stuff that's not necessarily even related to the topic. That's the fun community builder right there. One of my colleagues went on a shared webcast with another company, and about 20 minutes beforehand, he's like, when are you guys going to start this? Oh, right on the hour. Well, how do you get to know your customers? That's a lost opportunity. We have partners with whom, for whom, a webcast with 75 customers is a big deal. That's a big one. For us, if it's less than 1,000, we wonder if we forgot to announce it, because people come on and they want to be part of the community. Sales pitches, oh my gosh, don't ever force people to listen to a sales pitch. We always deliberately leave it to the end if we're going to do one at all. And we give people advance notice. We're about to start in on the sales pitch. So if you want to head out, this is your chance. It's optional. And we do get people staying on, but by choice. Troubleshooting docs. This is kind of the big brother of doing a fact. And I found that for major sections of our product, that I will usually have a much longer troubleshooting doc saying, start here, check this, start here, check this, start here, check this, start here. And it's long and annoying, but if somebody's having trouble with the LDAP integration, and I can send them a doc that says, start here, go down as far as you can. When something breaks, or the test doesn't work, or you're not seeing what I said you should be seeing, get back in touch. We'll go and work from there. That's very helpful for them because it also helps them understand what are the troubleshooting techniques that they can use in the future. And I've had generally positive reactions to that. It's never trying to get people off my back. It's trying to get them the information they need to solve it themselves next time too. Anytime you're writing with a customer, make it clear. Not everybody has English as a first language. Not everybody understands what a subnet mask is. Make it clear. Speak in simple terms. Don't try to use acronyms. Be especially patient with somebody who speaks English as a second language because they are translating for you. They have to put extra effort in. And if I'm using colloquialisms and acronyms and being sarcastic, it's going to take 3 times as long and they're not going to be happy. Always at a technical level is appropriate for that customer, and down to here are the actual steps I need you to do, and here's some screenshots. This is where you find that icon. This is where you find that next option. As clear as it needs to be. I have people, as I said, that I can just send them a command, say run this, and they will understand where it goes and how to do it, and they know if they get an error, they know how to solve it. And other people that are on the other end of that scale, I want to work on their level. The customer's doing you a favor. You're not doing them a favor. They bought your product. They deserve your time and your respect. When the ticket is closed, some ticket systems will do this automatically. They put up a simple, hey, how was this tech support experience for you? Try to get something back, a number from 1 to 10, a great, okay, or not good, a what would have made this experience better for you? Please email us with feedback. Whatever it happens to be, get some kind of feedback so you can know if you're doing it right. I don't ever want to assume that my customers are all happy. They should have a way to say, hey, this isn't working. I'm glad to say that in the 2.5 years I've been doing this, I've had exactly 1 customer who gave me anything less than a great. And I'm very proud of that, but I also need to pay attention to that 1 customer and make sure that I'm giving them what they need in the future. What is one thing we could have done better? That 1 question right there at the end of any tech support ticket closed form might be all you need. What could we have done better? Teach. Don't hand people commands if they don't understand what they're doing or why they're doing it or how this is going to help them. So I always start off with, I'd like to do a couple of troubleshooting steps. Could you please run? Or I need to find out if your system has enough drive space. Could you send me the output from this command? Or I know a lot of this is command line based, but whatever your interface is, can you at least let them understand what you're doing and why you're doing it? And I do understand not everybody wants to learn. Some of them just want it to work. So I don't necessarily spend a whole lot of time teaching somebody who just is like, I need this to work because I've got a demo in 2 hours. Great. Run these commands, and then I'll send them a note later saying what they did. So let's take a look at a couple of common issues. Unhappy customers. It'll always happen that you've got someone who just isn't happy with the original issue, your product, the price, the responsiveness of the tech support, me personally, whatever it is. So you've got a couple of options. I will commonly say if somebody's getting frustrated in email, could we get together on a video conference? And I'd like to work on this with you. Now, as I said, I've got somewhere like 10 or 12 hours during a work week and late at night where they can self-schedule. But if somebody's getting really annoyed, I'll say, I'm available this afternoon. Could I set up a Google Meet with you? And then they can pick a time that may be totally out of the normal support hours. Let's get this resolved, because it's more important to me that you're happy with this process than my particular dinner hour or what I was going to do, and maybe I wanted to get out of that meeting anyways. Did I say that out loud? If I need to escalate to a supervisor, I can. I don't. It rarely happens that anybody wants to go and talk to my boss. The last gasp for us is, look, we tried, and I don't think we can practically come up with a resolution for whatever this issue is. We'd be happy to offer you a refund. And there have been times when that has been appropriate. It's also really hard to do that, because then that affects your bottom line. But we do it from time to time. And I always feel like that's the worst that can happen, that I can't find an answer. We will still make that customer whole in some way. Try not to ask for customer data. We talked about this earlier. I look away if it looks like they're about to switch over to a password safe and they've forgotten they shared their whole screen. It does happen. I just do my best to respect anything they've got, and I really try not to ask them to send anything over unless I'm certain I need it to be able to troubleshoot their problem. I never ask for direct access to their systems. There are environments where that's possible. I never do that. For my privacy, it's a small shop, so I've got a little more flexibility. I think in an ideal world, one would not share more than either your first name and last initial. With a customer, I would never hand out my cell phone number. I would never hand out my direct email address. I've got a little bit of slack here, but in a larger organization, people really should be sending it into the support alias, and then the ticketing system should be directing those out to the right people. If you get a common question, post it as a FAQ. Oh, this is one of my favorites. I'll send a whole list of things that I'd like them to send back, and they'll answer one of them. Or they don't reply at all. It happens. So sometimes if I asked for 6 things, I got to send 3 emails to get all 6. That's okay. People are busy. Maybe they just didn't notice that I had a couple of other questions. There's a lot of patience and just saying, hey, I'm going to work with you on whatever level you can give me, because it's important. I'm going to keep asking. Now, what commonly happens at the end of an issue is that I send back what I think might be a potential fix: radio silence. And what I usually tend to do is say, if I'm not hearing back from that customer, they're probably okay. Maybe it's not fixed. Maybe they went off, they had another priority. They'll come back to me when it's an issue. But within a couple of weeks, if I haven't heard from them, I'll say, where are you with this? Is this okay? Did it get resolved? Maybe I'll hear back, maybe I won't. But I always, when I close a ticket, we use a ticketing system where they can automatically reopen it simply by replying. And I put that at the bottom. If you're all set, great. We'll close the ticket. If you still need help with this, just reply and we'll help you out. We talked about different primary languages. I have a customer in a European country where I have to be very careful because the way they translate things doesn't always come across, I think, the way they intended it. And so I have to be very careful never to take offense because it seems like they're insulting me or they're angry at me. It just might be a translation issue. If your customer is being rude, maybe cut them a little slack at first and then know to be able to talk to somebody else in your team or your supervisor to say, hey, this isn't working. I need some help with this. Disrespect for me, couldn't care less. If somebody thinks I'm an idiot, I'm good with that. I need to earn that. I need to show somebody that I have value to them. And if they're not being directly abusive, but they simply don't think I know what I'm talking about, that's fine. You can have any opinion of me that you want. I'm going to keep working with you as long as you'll work with me. If there's abuse, escalate it. Even if you don't need it to be handled right now, you think you can still work with it a little bit more, make sure somebody knows, because they may want to be able to start tracking this interaction a little bit more closely. Email will never carry emotions, feelings, frustrations very well. So I have a tendency to say, hey, if this interaction is going a little bit south, I will encourage somebody to get on a call, because I can look them in the eye and I can say, what are your facial expressions telling me? Maybe it was just a bad day for email and this person is actually doing just fine. So I try to get on calls when I think it's appropriate. I won't ask how many people feel like you have support from management. That's an uncomfortable question to ask. But there is an unfortunate picture that if you're in a support role, you're an expense. You are costing the company money. And what I try to point out is that when I'm working with somebody and I can make them feel like they have a good interaction with me and I'm the face of my company, that may turn into additional sales. That may turn into somebody who keeps renewing at the end of their contract. They may come back and buy other products from us. So I want to turn it from, I'm an expense for you, to we are supporting the sales process and we're making it easier for the salespeople at the end of the year to send out a new renewal. A couple of final thoughts. You are a good conduit for new feature requests. Keep an ear out for something that multiple customers are asking for. I love product developers. I like to make good friends with them because I want to be able to work with them and say, you know, I know we said that customers aren't going to need this, but that's not what I'm hearing live. I've had 3 people in the last month ask for this feature. Is there any way we could put it into the queue to be considered for the next release? Very few customers will get angry with me personally for not knowing something because I'm honest with them when I don't. But they will get angry if I don't follow through. So that's where I have to, if I make a statement that I'm going to get back to you within 2 hours, I will get back to you within 2 hours. Even if I'm on the way to the hospital with my appendix hanging out the side, I'm still going to have my cell phone out saying, busy at the moment, we'll get back to you. As I said, if you can do a good job, it makes a big difference for people who not only want to renew, but will sing your praises on social media. When you get new members on, what kind of things can you offer them? Well, existing classes on the product. Tell them to read through some of the blog posts that you've got. Watch the tutorials that you have for your customers. Give them a copy of the software and tell them to install it locally. Uninstall it, install it again. Get used to that process. Try out all the options. Sit along with somebody who's doing a live tech support event and have that person explain the process, what's going through their head as they try to troubleshoot what this person is doing. Well, we've got a database error from this. I'm going to check to see if they're maybe out of disk space. And now your new tech support rep can say, that's right, we should check for disk space. A lifeguard, the existing tech support rep who sits along the newbie and says, okay, go ahead and give it a try and I'll work with you before you hit send if there are things that need to be improved. For resources, I wanted to talk just a little bit about the particular choices that we have made and why we made them for the supporting tools for tech support. The ticketing system, as I said, email works for a little while. Once you get multiple people, multiple time zones, it doesn't really hold its water. So I need to be able to assign a ticket to me. I need to be able to do a full text search of all tickets. I need to see all the tickets associated with a customer to maybe go back through history and say, did we work on this before or was that somebody else? I like the live chat where somebody can literally bring up a little pop-up window on our portal and say, hey, Bill, what's the command to do fill in the blank here? And then I can just type right back to them. It actually shows up as a ticket in the system, but it's a live back and forth text chat. Some kind of feedback system, have something. And a way to have canned responses, still modify them, but something that where I have general text that I use very regularly, having that built into the ticking system helps a lot for us. Help Scout is the one that we happen to use. Again, this is not an endorsement. This is not a you must buy, but it happens to fill our needs. I like the fact that it has both an iOS and an Android app that I can leave on my phone. The only thing the apps don't do is the live chat. So I can't be on live chat if I only have my phone with me. I can only respond to email tickets. The nice part is if nobody's on live chat, then everything falls back to email tickets anyways. So I still see it. Freshdesk, it's been a couple of years now. I can't remember what didn't work, but for some reason it kind of didn't follow our particular flow. Jira, I understood you said that. I've used Jira in the past in an environment where it was used to track help. And I think maybe it was because we really didn't have a Jira administrator on site, that it kind of sat there and it sort of didn't work and we never took the time to fix it. So I'm not turning down Jira. I'm saying that in our environment, we never got it to work well. We don't have enough people simultaneously logged in to a phone system to take incoming phone calls that we need to use this. But depending on how many people are literally waiting at a telephone for an incoming phone call, having a support director of some kind might be appropriate. For the call scheduling, where it's just a video conference that we want to let our customers self-schedule, we use Calendly. It works with the Google Calendar that all of our team happens to use. I think it also works with Microsoft Teams, but I don't know that for sure. And then we set up blocks of times that are available. We set up here are some people who can do it. And it will look at our calendar and say, does Bill have something available at this half hour? Okay, great. He doesn't, so I'll make that available. All I have to do to say I don't want to take calls Wednesday from 1 to 3 is put in an entry in my calendar that says busy from 1 to 3. And now people can't schedule. We also set it up to say you can't schedule within 12 hours of the event, because I never want to go to bed at night, have somebody at 4 a.m. schedule a call at 8 o'clock, and I'm not getting up until 10 and I've missed it. So we have a minimum time before you can actually schedule. Video conferencing, screen sharing is critical if it's got the ability to take over the person's keyboard and mouse and they're good with that. That's a nice plus. I don't consider that crucial because I can relay what I want to have them do in most cases. And I don't really want to say, hey, I'm just going to take over control of your system. Some people aren't really happy about that. For actually doing this, obviously with the PDF that you can pull down from the Discord channel, you've got the clickable links in here. Having a nice quality microphone and camera make a big difference because it looks professional. The Yeti is a very good audio sound. I think that may be on its way to being discontinued, unfortunately. The Insta360 camera isn't available on Amazon. It is a beautiful, beautiful picture. It really looks like you're sitting on, it's great. It will also follow you. So if I've got it over here and I'm walking back and forth because I've got to do something, the camera tracks me and I can use hand gestures to stop it. And I can do some other things with simple hand gestures, but it's really nice. If you're short of, yes?
I can also add to that list the OBSpot Tiny 2.
OBSpot Tiny 2.
SBOT Tiny 2.
Great. So could you put a link in that into the chat at some point? Thanks much. Beautiful. So find something that looks really good. The Insta360 is unfortunately somewhat expensive. I think it's around $250 or $300. But if this is what you do all day, absolutely. Lighting, for some reason, I picked the brightest room in the house and the darkest corner of the brightest room in the house. So I do have to get some additional lights on me to make it look like I'm actually there and not, just barely woke up from bed and still in my jammies. Comfortable headphones with clear audio, whatever those happen to be. Interestingly, I like the Apple AirPods Pro, but for some reason they tend to disconnect. And I think it's because I've got too many devices all fighting for them. But either way, they are very clear audio. Zoom happens to serve our needs very well. Again, there are lots of different packages at work, and I wouldn't turn you off of what works for you. Google Meet, that for me is just a little simpler to just start something up, to throw it on my calendar and instantly have an entry sent up and an invitation sent off, but whatever works for you. Shared document editor. I will sometimes share the doc with the customer, and I just pay attention to what I put in that document to make sure there's nothing company private. But I also put it into a folder that has shared in all caps, so that somebody coming along and looking at that folder will realize that this is no longer something internal, and they have to be careful about what they put in there. Phone call management system, this was what I was talking about earlier. TalkDesk is one that happens to work with our particular software. GoTo is also another great one. Something that can route calls to multiple people ready to accept them, and the ability to check in and check out and say I'm available or I'm not, so that it's not sending a call to a phone that just rings and rings. Ready to go from here. So I've got a couple of blog posts that are on the side of this particular topic. We've talked a lot about general tech support and the techniques involved. The blog posts here are more specific to computer software. So I have a number of commands that I know how to use for looking inside a system, saying, is it overloaded in some way? Where do I find out errors messages? How do I know if the computer has run out of memory and is actively killing off processes? Peering inside is where I tried to include as much of that information as I can. Linux, somewhat focused, but I try to cover Mac and Windows when appropriate as well. Worth just a quick glance. Why is my program running slowly? Because performance can be a big deal for our particular environment. This blog post is one of my favorites as well, because it simply covers a lot of the 4 major resources you have in a computer: memory, disk, CPU, and network. And when a program's running slowly, one of those, almost always exactly one of those, is the problem. What do you do at that point to try to compensate for it? And it's not specific to a particular program, it's not too specific to a particular operating system, it's general concepts. Getting your bearings on a Linux system. If you're a Windows user and you're suddenly told you have to work with a Linux system, my sympathies to you, and here's where you go. I talk about how to go and do basic things on a Linux side when you're used to a Windows system. The class that I've got up there is the new course that we've started on Bash scripting for server administration. This is, again, getting further and further away from the concept of tech support, but it talks a lot about the command line that you find on Linux and is really specific to that. If you're a Mac or Windows user and you're continuing to use Mac or Windows, you don't need that class. For a little bit more fun, the article on the 500-mile email. We have an email that can only travel 500 miles away from the server. Why? It's a good puzzle, and it's not clear until they get to the end why. The Bastard Operator from Hell. Has anybody ever read these or heard of these? Yep. This is back in the days when you had system operators who would manage a system and say who could get access to a certain amount of time on them when these were mainframes stuck in a university somewhere. The Bastard Operator from Hell is it's a good way to let off steam if you had a frustrating day, because this guy is not very patient with his end users. Let me put it that way. Some more funny tech support stories. I haven't watched much of the IT crowd, but what I've seen is hilarious. I love the story of the woman who gets a box that is the internet, and she gets to bring it to a conference. Like, this is the internet right here. It's awesome. So that's the end of the main talk. I'm not going to go through the individual stories here, but what we've got are some actual support issues that have come up. And if you feel like kind of thinking through these and just practicing your skills, I put the initial problem report up here. And in the PDF that you have, my hope is that it includes the speaker notes. If somebody wants to take a look and just confirm that. I actually didn't open up the PDF to confirm it. Down in the speaker notes are the additional, are basically how it was resolved. How do we get to an answer on these? So this is something you can kind of do when you've got some slack time and say, how would I have approached this problem if it had shown up in my support box? Thank you so much for your time.